Move along.
I will do a little introduction at the beginning, and then we'll go on. So I'll start in Latvian. Mani sauc Andra Muižniece, un es esmu kopā ar Eviju, mēs vadām Centru cilvēku izaugsmei Torņkalns, un jūs ļoti sirsnīgi sveicu šovakar mūsu vakar iepazīšanās sesijā ar integrālā koučinga meistaru, pedagogu un vienkārši fascinējošo personību, viedo un harismātisko Mišelinu Grīnu. Mišelīna, kā jūs varbūt ziniet, sākot no 5. aprīļa mūsu centra ietvaros vadīsim 7 nedēļu programmu ar nosaukumu Kā no neiecietīga un kontrolējoša vecāka kļūt par pacietīgu un uzticības pilnu un klātesošu vecāku. Šī programma notiks Zoomā, tā notiks otrdienās no 18 līdz 20, tātad 2 stundas nedēļā, 7 nedēļu laikā, kuras jūs varēsiet veltīt šai svarīgajai tēmai, kā apzināti audzināt savus mīļos bērnus. Šī ir jau 2. reize, kur mēs piedāvājam šo lekciju ciklu. Es esmu pati māte 2 pieaugušām meitām, un es varu jums vienkārši pastāstīt, ka tad, kad piedalījos 1. seminārā visu laiku, es domāju, kaut es būtu šo zinājusi senāk, tad, kad vajadzēja reaģēt labi, kad bija grūtas situācijas un kad bērni mani pieveda pie manām robežām, ko viņi ļoti lieliski māk manā gadienā. Es gribēju jūs pabrīdināt, ka mēs vēlamies ierakstīt šo sesiju, un es tagad iešu atpakaļ uz angļu valodu. Dear Mišelīna, so welcome here again. We're really delighted to welcome you back at our center, Cilvēku izaugsmei Torņkalns. I've told everybody how wonderful you are, how most skilled and competent in all questions regarding parenting a child you are. I look forward to this evening. It is always inspiring to spend time with you. So now I will let you introduce yourself, tell about your life and skills. And after that, we will be open to questions from all the participants. Feel free to ask. And now I'm handing it over to you, Mišelīna.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a little bit of a cold, so I have a little cough, so pardon me. Hello, welcome. I hope Andra said some beautiful things about me, but it was lovely to listen to your language. Obviously, I am not Latvian. I'm Canadian, and I actually live in the US, and I've been in the US for over 20 years now. It's where I raised my children. So what can I say about myself? I came from a family of 5 kids, and my mother was definitely a very strong captain at the helm of that ship. And we were the family that had all of the kids from all of the neighborhood come and hang out at our house. When I graduated university, my first job was actually in child protection. So I went into the world of investigations of child physical, sexual, emotional abuse. And it was, I got to see really the darkest side of parenting, and all that, that's that generation after generation after generation, and how that abuse would get traveled through these generations. I don't speak Latvian, but I do speak French. And so I was actually in a community that had a lot of French speaking in Canada. And so they were waiting for a French counselor to arrive, and they handed me these files. And that's what I was reading through, like grandfather to father to son to, it was just amazing to see that. But again, I didn't have the skills really back then to know what to do or how to really make a difference. And then I had my own kids, and I definitely didn't want to go back into the child protection realm. It was really a hard work. It's not kind of the work you can just leave at the office. It really sits heavy on your heart. And so I went back to school and got a master's degree in counseling, and started working in my children's school. And living in the US, I didn't have family around me. So I was always looking for community. And so I found community in the Waldorf or the Steiner schools. And so my kids were in the Steiner schools, which is a different philosophy to education, which was what I was looking for my kids. And so I was working as the counselor there. And one of the things that I noticed is, the teachers are trained in the Waldorf school movement, to develop their inner spiritual guide. And yet there was also some real challenges that these teachers were facing with their students, real behavioral challenges. Again, this is about 20 years ago. And they just couldn't understand how their techniques or their management or their disciplining wasn't causing the results that they were hoping for. And so they would often bring their student to me, their disruptive student to me, and they'd kind of hand this child off to me with like, fix him or fix her, kind of energy or behind it. And of course, I would have the beautiful opportunity to be with this child one-on-one, to talk to them, to do the counseling and the games and the conversation, brainstorming and offering suggestions and ways of managing themselves in the classroom. And so then I would bring the child back to the classroom, and sure enough, within a day or two, that teacher would be bringing that very same student back to me. So this was a pattern I was starting to notice. And I'd have conversations with the teacher, and she was 30 years educator. She's been with lots of students. Her heart was in the right place, but this student really, really challenged her. And then I would meet with the student, and the student was be like, my teacher hates me kind of feeling. So this is when I started to notice, I started to pay attention to, it's not the teacher who's to blame. And it's not the child who's to blame, although both of them wanted to blame one another. It was actually the relationship between the two. It was something in that relationship that wasn't working. And in the school, I could often see like parents were blaming teachers, teachers would blame parents, parents would blame administration, administration would blame, it just kind of was this cycle of something's not working, we need to point the finger at somebody. And so, again, I was a mom at that time. I had 3 kids. I could manage all these kids all day long. But once I got in the car, I was yelling and screaming before I'd even left the parking lot because, I just worked a full day and here I was losing it. And so I didn't have the skills at that time to really help this teacher create any change, because it's really up to the adult. It's always up to the adult. The child is just learning the behaviors from us adults. So that's when I really started diving into, okay, how do we as human beings create change? How do we as organizations create change? And this really led me on this path of integral theory and coaching and, studying, trauma and, all of these things that I've got: somatic coaching, spirituality, anthroposophy. And so that's when I started working with how do we as parents create this change within ourselves, because it's in this dynamic between us, it's in the connection. A few years later, I was homeschooling my own kids. We had actually taken them out of that school and I was homeschooling them. And here I was now, frustrated, angry, upset with my own kids. And I realized in that moment, oh my God, I'm just like that teacher. I'm just like that teacher, frustrated and blaming the child. And so that's when I made the decision, okay, I'm not, before all else, I put the relationship with my child or children first, because that's the only place where that learning and change is going to occur, is once that relationship is well formed and bonded and a connection is happening. So this has kind of led me on a journey of self-discovery. I have been challenged by my children. I have failed many times. I have fallen on my face. I have gotten back up, and I, continue to learn and to take these skills into my system. So my kids are all grown now and blessed and released, I call them. They're 26, 24, and 21. And it's been such an amazing shift to watch them when I kind of started making the shift from parenting them to coaching them, and what they've learned and taken away from that. So that's a little bit of just kind of my life story that's taken me on this turn. I now work for Integral Coaching Canada. I actually coach new coaches, and I run programs online, and I coach individuals in how to create that change, the sustainable change that was going to last you a lifetime. It's not just something I'm going to tell you to do, you go do it, and it's changed. It just doesn't work that way. So that's a snapshot of my work and who I am and what brought me here. So I'm definitely open to answer any other questions.
Well,
Any other-
I would like to ask you, what is your own childhood? I mean, did your own childhood experience have an influence on what you chose to become as a parent?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. As I said, I came from a family of 5. My mother was really strong at the helm of that ship, kept us all very much in line. And pretty traditional. My mother stayed at home with the kids, and my father would, take the train off to the city every day. And so there was a real principle within my mom, definitely some very guiding principles of what children need, which is nature and freedom and exploration. So that was instilled within us. We were a family that did not have a TV. I didn't have a TV growing up at all. And my parents were offered TVs by friends, thinking maybe they just couldn't afford it, but it was actually, they were purposely choosing not to have TV. So we had a lot of exploration, a lot of free time, and a lot of, out there in the world. And, with all that being said, my parents also came from a pretty traditional discipline. It's do as I say, not as I do. It's children are to be heard, to be quiet. What's the saying? To be seen and not heard, right? That's a very, whenever we cried, my father would say, quit your crying or I'll give you something to really cry about, So there was that fear, the fear base, right? So there was also this learning that if you have emotions or if you have strong emotions, you need to zip them up, hold them down, push them down, and not show them, because that would be cause for more discipline or more. So I'm definitely recognize that as with all of us who've grown up in this discipline of fear, right? This comes from a discipline of fear. There's a sense, do as I say or else, right? And whatever that or else is, it would place us as children in a sense of fear. So now, as we've matured and we're no longer kind of in that traditional sense of parenting of the 80s and the 90s and now into the 2000s, it's become more of manipulation. So I'm not going to threaten physical harm, but I am going to manipulate you. I am going to, you get this or you don't get that. You do this or this is going to happen, right? So there's this manipulation that's going on. So I always say there's this tool belt that we parents are carrying around. And it's the tools in those tool belt are power, force, manipulation, control, and coercion. And those tools really can work, right? We're bigger and they do work, and our kids will fall into line with those tools. And what I'm really bringing forth is, how do we actually discipline our children out of a sense of love? How do we stay that they're in a sense of safety? They're in the connection with the parent is always there. Love is never questioned. Fear is never coming up in the relationship while we're in that disciplining sense. And how are we as parents able to be with our children's really big emotions? Because let's face it, our kids are just they're just emotional beings, right? They can be bawling their eyes out to a temper tantrum, to laughing and giggling, to hitting their brother, all in like an hour. So their emotional roller coaster is really can be really difficult to us as parents, especially when we ourselves have been taught, stop your crying, you be quiet, so we've been taught to shove our emotions down. And that just creates an emotional imprinting with inside of ourselves, so that when now we're facing our children and they're having their emotional outbreaks, now we don't have the skills. We haven't, all of our skills as parents come from our parents or the person who is your major caregiver, right? So if we don't have those skills to deal with those emotional upset, then our children are just going to learn that same emotional patterning, which is shove the emotions down, and we don't bring them up. So this is why all of my courses are like, this course is always about how do we discipline out of love and not out of fear. And that's where I'm really seeing is this is the big shift. And, it's a huge shift because, for all these years we've been on this planet, it's kind of been out of a discipline, out of fear. So
yeah, I wanted to, I remember that during your course, and the last course that you gave one of the skills was composure, to keep your your emotion together and to ground yourself, which I found a skill that I have not only, I mean, my kids are out of the house, but I find myself falling back to that skill in my everyday life with other challenges. It's just this feeling of letting down roots and to understand that you can handle this. I love this, you know, I am safe and I can handle this. These are these feelings I thought were very, very strong. That's a fantastic skill that you teach. How did you come up with that? You know, because I mean, one of the things was as well, we had in the first group of parents, there were parents that said that when they lose it, they start yelling at the children. And what influence has yelling on kids? What does that do to them if the parent that is supposed to be so strong is yelling at them?
Yeah, well, it instantly triggers a sense of fear, right? That's what it is. I mean, even you know, we can't prevent all of the ways our kids are going to feel fear. Like, that's, first of all, I'm not suggesting we bubble wrap our children and not allow them to experience fear in their lives. That's an important and needed, necessary emotion to trust. And how do we as parents create fear within their children? I mean, even if I raised my voice right now and said something loudly, you know, we would all go a little bit like, right? We'd all feel that little bit of fear inside of us. And so there's that's that kind of fear that we're trying to wake that up in our kids to give their system a little bit of stress. Ultimately, our ways of disciplining these children out of fear is we're really trying to stress their system just a little bit. So what happens when we stress the system is actually cortisol is released. It's the chemical that's, you know, connected with fear. It's released into the body. When cortisol is running through our bodies, you know, part of our prefrontal lobes shuts down, right? So this is our executive functioning, a place that we want to be using when we're trying to solve problems. But if that starts shutting down, then we're only in our lower centers of our brain, which is kind of the amygdala and the fear-based centers. And so we're not thinking. And what do we do often as parents is we kind of go in going, what are you doing? You shouldn't be hitting your brother. Why are you hitting your brother? And like, the question why is they're not capable of answering that question because that frontal cortex is shut down. The only skill they had in that moment was to hit their brother because that's all they knew, how to move him out of the way in that moment. Teaching new skills to us as adults and to our children, it takes time, it takes practice over and over and over and over and over again. I often joke it's 2,500 times in context for a child to learn a new skill, right? So that's a lot of times, and we can see that example is when they were babies, right? We have all this, here's a flower, smell a flower, oh, pretty flower, oh, pink flower, blue flower, oh, smelly flower, pretty flower. We say it over and over and over and over and over again, and then one day they say flower and we're like, but there was 2,500 times that led up to that moment where that brain got wired for them to be able to connect all of the dots, to be able to recognize it, see it, and say it. That's the same skill that we're trying to build in how to say to their brother, I don't like it when you hit me, move over now, right? Like, for a child to be able to say that, I mean, we adults have a hard time saying that. So what does a child do? Punches their brother, right? Because that's the skill they have in the moment to get what their needs met, which is they want their brother to leave them alone or move over, right? So we as adults, how do we struggle with being assertive, expressing our needs, communicating, and this all has to do with cortical limbic connections in the brain, from the survival state to the emotional state to the executive state, to be able to wire that all up so that we're calm in the moment, to be able to know what our needs are and to be able to express our needs. That's a huge function. It's a huge function. And what happens is what we are needing for parents is to recognize that I have so many parents that'll come to me. Okay, just tell me how to get my kid to, right? How do I get them to eat broccoli? How do I get them to go to bed on time? How do I get them to keep their papers organized? How do I get them? It's always this, how do I get them? And it's very in the moment. How do I get them right here, right now? And what we lose sight of as parents, and we have to hold this long-term perspective. This is metacognition. How do we hold that in this moment, right here, right now, is instilling the emotional pattern. It's instilling the inner voice for them for the rest of their lives. So whatever voice you're using with your children now, that's going to be their inner voice for the rest of their lives. All right. So if we look through our lives, if you had a father's, children should be seen and not heard, quit your crying or I'll give you something to cry about. It's negative voice, it's punishing voice, it's a empowering voice. So then that lives within me. So what happens when now I'm going out in the world and I've done something silly, stupid, whatever, my inner voice is going, God, I'm such an idiot. Why did I speak up? I shouldn't have said that, right? It's a punishing voice. And isn't the voice, the inner voice that we're trying to build in our children is one that's loving and connected and supportive so that they have that kind of inner guidance, inner wisdom to guide them through their lives. So yeah, I'll pause there.
Maybe somebody wants to ask your own questions, somebody of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
We had one question about divorce in children. I don't remember who wrote that.
It was something, Evia, you sent that to me, right? The effects of divorce on children, or?
Yes, that question came from one of the girls. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the moms. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's no doubt that divorce has effect on children. It's a disruption. It's a major disruption in their lives. And my kids went through a divorce. So after I homeschooled my kids for 3 years, then their father and I got a divorce. And part of that divorce was, I couldn't stay homeschooling them anymore. They had to go back to school, and they ended up going into a Montessori school. And it was a pretty bitter divorce. It wasn't pleasant at all for anybody. And, my kids are, definitely unpacking all of that now that they're adults. And my youngest will phone me. She's 21. And okay, Mom, I need to know what happened when that day and you and Dad were fighting and you said this and why was that and how come? And so she's like really unpacking all of this now to try and figure out who she is and what these patterns are that she's living out. And so she is her mother's daughter. So she is kind of a self-analytical, wanting to grow and develop kind of kid. So she's in that process now. But the thing about divorce is, just as it is when you're married, the problems that you have married don't go away just because you get divorced. It's the same problems. If communication is a problem when you're married, communication is going to be a problem when you get divorced, right? So it's not that these problems go away. You just don't have to be in the same house with this person. But it's going to affect how your kids watch you go through it. How are you going through the divorce? Are you going through the divorce blaming, pointing the finger, talking negatively about your ex-spouse, doing all of the things that a lot of divorced people do? Or are you working on yourself, remaining calm, keeping yourself composed, staying open and loving to the ex-spouse, speaking kindly of them in front of the kids? I mean, there's so much that how you go through the divorce is how your kids are going to learn how to deal with breakup, right? How they're going to learn to deal with relationships. And this goes with anything. Kids are emotional sponges. They just, especially the younger they are, up until the age of 7, all of the emotional imprinting is happening in their brains under the age of 7, because that's when the brain is rapidly firing and wiring together. And then So under the age of 7, they're absorbing everything, and then they're just watching us. We know this, right? They're watching everything we do. You know, a great little example is when my kids were little and we were at a park, and you know, the little plastic cars, and my friend's son jumped into the little plastic car, and he's driving, and he slams his hand down on the steering wheel. He goes, "God damn it." He was like 3 or 4 years old. And right away, the mother goes, "Oh, I don't know where he got that from." Like, obviously, he picked that up from her, right? So it's like, that is what they're absorbing all the time. Now, we don't have to be perfect humans. I want to just say that too. We're perfectly imperfect, every single one of us. As I said, I've fallen on my face. I've messed up more times with my kids than I can count. You know, so that's also, I say that because when you start doing your own work around your parenting, it's easy to kind of want to turn to your parents and blame them. And all we can do is turn towards them and say, okay, they did the best they could with the skills that they had. I'm doing the best. You're doing the best you can with the skills that you had. And, you know, what new skills can I learn? What other skills can I learn so that my kids have better skills when they're parents? And that's really the process that we're going through. So we don't have to be perfect parents, but we want to demonstrate that we're willing to learn and grow and develop and practice and fall on our faces and get back up and try again, because that's really we're teaching our children perseverance. We're teaching our children growth and development and all the ways that we're moving through and navigating life's disruptions. So I hope that answered the question around divorce. And I'm not sure if anyone here was the one who asked it, but yeah, I'm happy to answer anything else.
I've got a question, so maybe you can tell a bit about the upcoming course. So how it's going to be structured, and what we can expect, or what we should, I don't know, be ready for, or
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so this is a course that I've been teaching for almost 15 years. I keep updating it as I develop and grow. There's more pieces that I'm always synthesizing into this program. So basically it's 7 weeks. It is in the 7 weeks, you're learning one skill every week, one new skill that you then practice for a week. And they're small practices. They're not, you know, I'm not saying, I want you to be successful with it. So I'm designing these practices to be really small. And that new skill that you're learning, it goes in partnership with a power that you already have. So we as humans are built with these inner powers. Love is a power, right? Our attention is power. It's an energy, right? It's a movement. Our free will is a power, right? It's a choice in where we direct our energy. So these are powers that you already have within you, but we have to make them more conscious. We have to make them more aware of, oh, where am I putting my attention now? Right? Where is my attention going in this moment? So we want to bring more consciousness to the powers that you're already using and putting into practice a new skill. And so that's basically the structure. It's one skill and one power every week. And then throughout the week, you're going to be practicing observing yourself. So I tried on this new skill. This is what happened. How did it work? How did it not work? And then we come back together the following week and we all just kind of discuss. So how was it successful? How did it fail? How could you do things a little differently? And that there's a discussion amongst the parents. So, and then I do another teaching of a new skill and a new power, and you go off and you practice that one. Each of the skills and each of the powers are building on one another. It's a scaffolding. Right? So we start with the most important foundational pieces, and then slowly we start building on top of that, because you'll recognize that the foundational pieces are the ones that disappear when you're in the heat of the moment, right? When you're in that moment where the kids are, and everything's breaking down and you just want to go, right? We lose those foundational pieces. So we have to always remember to come back. Like composure was the one that Andra was saying, right? That's the first and most important foundational piece. And so we start and we just keep building on it each week. So 7 weeks, it's an hour and a half, depending on how many people join, an hour and a half to 2 hours. I think we usually went for a 2-hour conversation each week. Yeah, is that helpful? Yeah. And I know it's starting April 5th, so it's in 2 weeks we start. It's on a Tuesday evening for you guys, morning for me. Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to take any other questions.
You mentioned that your parents didn't let you watch TV. This is not a course specific question, but just a question. Did you let your kids watch TV? What was your approach to the use of, I understand that there is, I mean, I see that with my piano students, parents really struggling with, you know, having this automatic nanny that keeps the kids occupied and calm, but basically, yeah, what is your stand on that?
Yeah. So I really minimized a lot of television watching for my kids, but there was 2 parents in the home, and 2 parents don't always agree. And the father of my children grew up on TV, so TV was an important part of his life. And so there was always compromise around how much TV the kids could watch and that sort of thing. What I would say is, for me personally, because I didn't grow up with TV, I was aware of kind of that inner creative impulse that children naturally have. And I could see that in my own children, right? As soon as they're born, they're just like touch, taste, feel, ask all day long. They're just in that natural explorative state. So when my son hit 4 years old, we were in the States, he's the oldest, and we were looking at kindergartens. And I walked into and I observed in a kindergarten, and it was just, to me, it was completely against what the way children were naturally meant to explore. Like, it was line up to go to the bathroom, line up to wash your hands, and line up to do this, and only this amount of time is allowed outside play. So that's when I started going, okay, I want something different for my kids than a traditional public school education. And that's when I started searching out alternatives to education, and where I found the Steiner School and also the Montessori School. So I have these 2 philosophies that I've studied, you know, that is also playing into the work that I offer, is how do we allow the natural curiosity of the child to flourish? You know, there's so much research that I've done, but I'll just share this really. It's a study that was done, 1,500 kindergarten students, and it was called the Genius Study. And they gave the kids a paper clips, and they said, you know, come up with all the ideas that you could do with paper clips. So the genius level was something like, let's just say 500 different ideas for paper clips. So this is considered divergent thinking, right? It's not just used for a paper clip. There's so many other things you could do with it. They retested these kids back in high school, and like 3/4 of them didn't even reach that kind of genius level, right? So again, I'm speaking for American public school, but there's something that gets taught out of our children, and that's creativity, our natural innate curiosity to explore and learn and you know, find out for themselves. And for myself too, I mean, this is something I've wholeheartedly believed in. I struggled in public school. I graduated from high school thinking I was stupid because I had a really hard time with a lot of classes. I'm more of a kinesthetic person, and movement, and that's how I learn. And so, so there's this part of me that I was always searching and wanting to give my kids that exploration so that they could always follow their innate curiosity. So here I am now, an entrepreneur, and I'm still in that process. I mean, I've been running my own business now for 15 years. Oh, I've got to figure out how to do an online class. This is something I want to offer. Okay, now I have to figure out website. I have to figure out back end. I have to figure out this. I have to figure out that. So I'm learning these things, but it's on behalf of my desire to offer my gifts to the world, what I have to share. So it's not like I want to learn that, but I have to learn that to be able to do this. And so there's something that I've always been searching, that's kind of school system that allows that child to continue to explore their innate gifts, to figure out what their innate gift is to offer this world. And we as adults, we didn't really have that, right? We're still, a lot of us are still struggling. That's why coaching is such a big thing, is I don't know what I should be doing with my life, and I'm 50 years old, this sort of thing. So I'll pause there, and I see that we have another question.
Hi, yes.
Hello.
I just wanted to ask you a short question about the kids' tendency to lie and what causes it.
Well, I don't know what causes it. I could say that. I do know some kids have more of a tendency to lie than others. It's part of what I would say kind of their own personality development. They're trying it on. Lying at 4 years old is different than lying at 14 years old. And many adults still continue to lie, whether it's a little white lie. Oh no, I don't want to come to your party tonight, I have guests coming into town, or if it's a really big lie, which we see in public realm all the time. So lying is a part of being human, and why, what I would question is the age of the child and what happens with the child. Is there a fear to tell the truth? Because, and I don't know anything about your children, so I'm really answering this in a very generalized term. Is there a fear of punishment? Is there a fear of discipline? Is there a fear that I'm going to get into trouble if I do tell the truth? And that to me is probably more problematic, because then it's really us parents that tend to put that pressure on our kids to be a certain way. And therefore, if I have to be a certain way, then I better lie about myself. And again, we're seeing this all over social media right now. People lie, right? They put up these big flashy pages, and really that's just their happy space, and there's a lot of other stuff, being human, that's going on in the background. So generally that's what I can answer right now. I had my own experience with my youngest who had a tendency to lie at a young age, and I recognized that, whereas my older kids, I had never had that experience with them lying. They were always willing to just be very truthful. So it's always something to navigate, because us as parents have a judgment of lying. We have a bias of, if my child's lying at 4, oh my God, they're going to be a lying person at 24, right? So we got to hold and observe our own judgment around lying. And that goes with so much, right? So that we parents, we adults have our own inner belief systems, and these belief systems are unconscious, meaning they're blind to us. We can't see them. And so much about the work that I'm doing is helping individuals to see their unconscious belief systems and make them more conscious. We can't change our unconscious belief systems if we can't see them. So we have to keep bringing them forward and going, oh, that's why I'm reacting so harshly. And again, I'm not speaking, I'm very generalizing here around children lying. That's why I'm so angry about my child lying, right? I have a deep belief system that, they're going to be a criminal, or they're going to go to jail, or whatever, right? So this process of changing our belief systems, of changing our patterns, of building new skills, it does take some, honest, heartfelt work, right? Real compassion for ourselves to really start to see, where are my unconscious beliefs, and how am I living my life based on beliefs that aren't the truth, based on beliefs that I don't really believe in. They got imprinted in us when we were children, right? So this is the tricky, slippery slope of, coaching parents, is Your children are your mirrors. Your children are always showing up with their behaviors to help you see where you need to develop. And that's a hard pill to swallow. I just want to acknowledge that, I've had to swallow that pill many times. And it's a tricky thing to do, but this is kind of why when we're in this work together and the work that I do individually, it's truly loving and supportive. You will be loved. You will not 1 ounce, not 1 iota of judgment on my part. And everybody in the group, there is no judgment. We are all doing the very, very, very best we can with the skills that we have. And until we can start holding that kind of loving and compassionate space for one another, that loving and compassionate space that we would have hoped our parents could have held for us, then we can start really seeing some of this unconscious patterning that we have and the ways that we're showing up in creating these unconscious patterns in our children. Yeah, so thank you for that question. That took me on a different path there, but glad I said all that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm happy to ask or answer any other questions, personal about myself or about my work or anything at all.
How did you decide that such a course was needed? Did you first learn coaching and then decided that your coaching skills could be put to use in a parenting course, or was it the other way around?
Yeah, no, it was, I started out in social work, right? So applied social sciences, and that's when I got into child protection. So I didn't know why I was going into child protection. I had a, out of university, I had a deep need to give and to offer myself to people in need. I mean, that was something instilled in me by my parents as well, but I also had that within me. And then I ended up going into child protection, and that was at like 24 years old. I had started working with parents then, and I wasn't even a parent, so it was really just going on what I knew as from my parents. And then I went into counseling, and I got my master's in counseling. And then I was working with the kids at school. So again, I have a real, I would say I have a real gift with connecting with children. I have a way of being with children that is very fluid and easy. And so I would work with kids, and I still have parents calling me, even though I made the choice, okay, like me working with the kids, actually, I need to start working with the adults who are supporting the kids, who are working with the kids, who are creating the environment for these kids. And so that's where I made the switch to parents and teachers. And then the other thing was, I didn't know how to create change, even in counseling. Like, I never wanted to go down the true psychotherapeutic mental health boards, because to me, again, that didn't feel holistic. It felt like this is the mental health, this is behavioral health, this is emotional health. Like, it was this chopping up of an individual. And I knew intuitively that I think, because I came from such a nature-based childhood, that intuitively I knew it was a holistic approach to the whole child, to the whole being. And then so that's when I wanted to know, how do we as individuals create change? That was the other thing. I had gone through my own set of counseling, and I still didn't feel like counselors knew how to create change. Counseling or psychology, psychotherapeutic, there is going back to try and find the root. Coaching is, wait a second, let's get to know where you are right now, and let's move you forward to where you want to go. So there's a different approach, and it's developmental. So it's skill building in the coaching methodology that I use. And then I also was an athlete. So I've played my sport at the highest level. I've been to 2 World Cups. So I know how to take coaching was really like, okay, you have to build this skill and this skill and this skill, and then you have that athlete. So I also had that other ability of coaching within sport. And then all of that, why did I go into, child protection? I mean, yes, it was a job out of university, but I wasn't even aware. But as a child, I was abused. I was sexually abused as a child by a babysitter. And I wasn't consciously aware of it until I was much later, till I was much older. So obviously I was drawn into this child abuse realm from an unconscious place, because I wasn't even conscious of what had happened to me until I had my own daughter and she reached the age that I had been sexually abused. And that's when I realized what had happened to me from a more conscious place. So, again, these unconscious patterns and beliefs are working through us all the time. So that's kind of my trajectory from counseling to coaching to counseling to coaching. And it's always been around the child. It's always been around the child, even though I've coached entrepreneurs and leaders of companies and aerospace engineers and doctors and lawyers. I've coached everybody, but my passion is around this next generation. They're going to be the leaders of our world. They are going to be the ones who are going to create our new world, right? Our world is, crumbling, falling apart. Things are shifting dramatically, and we've got to work towards creating what's coming. And these are the kids that are going to do it. And so for me, it's always, my passion has always been around the next generation and how can we give them the skills to be in a world that's incredibly uncertain and not collapse into their own fear. So yeah, that's another little piece where my deep passion comes from. Yeah.
I have a question. I don't even know if that's a question. I'm going to try to formulate it as a question. But what's your take on that work context that parents nowadays are living in? Because I have a feeling that the workload the parents are carrying actually is huge. Like in our family, we're barely kind of like juggling all the balls, keeping them in the air, and then there's playing kids, and there's like other things and that we have in our lives. And I mean, we don't have the luxury of any of us staying at home. We don't have the maybe support system that our parents had, because their parents were already, by this age, they were already retired, so what's I don't even know what's the question here, but how would you comment that it's not even like the busyness of life, but it's really that workload we are all carrying, and we don't have an option to drop it. We just have to keep going, and then kids, and it's hard, and we're exhausted, and how to do it in a manner that we stay and happy.
No, I appreciate that question. And a quote is coming to me: change is inevitable. Growth is optional. And why that's coming to me is because this change, right, from the way your parents, you guys both have computers, you're both running to work, your work days don't end just because you leave the office, or in pandemic, you had the kids going to school while you were trying to go to work. I mean, that's part of this change, this whole disruption. Everything that's disrupting is a part of change. So in this, growth is optional. And what I mean by that is, that is the anxiety of modern day life. That is the pull of your energy in all of these different ways. So, you've got half your mind is on that project you're working on, the other is on your daughter who's struggling in math, and then you've got, your husband who's going away for 2 weeks, and then you've got to figure out chicken, but no, wait a second, the other one doesn't eat chicken, and I got to make something else so they all eat. I mean, you've got your energy spread out in so many different areas that there's no foundation. There's nothing to stand on within inside of yourself. And when you don't have anything to stand on with inside of yourself, that just increases the amygdala, the polyvagal nerve, all of this, the anxiety and trauma that's going through the body. So we're all running around in a trauma state. We're all running around in a state of, anxiety ridden. And so the growth then is, how do I come home to myself? How do I just be with me? How do I even put my own oxygen mask on so I have enough oxygen to take care of others? And these are, wellness is a skill that you can learn. We often think if I got it or I don't, but it's actually, we can build these skills, and it takes time, and it takes a little bit of attention, and it takes a little bit of focus, and all of this is on a micro level. I don't want to make it sound like every day you've got to do a 3-hour practice. It's like really, really small, because your energy is your attention. And if your attention is there and there and there and there and there and there and there, you're not fully present to you, and you're not fully present to your kids. And if there's one thing kids are really, really good at, is trying to get your attention. And they'll do that with their bestest of behaviors and their worstest of behaviors, because they want you fully present to them. And that is their ultimate goal. That's why I consider children, they're like little bodhisattvas. If you're familiar with a Buddhist, they're here to help us all grow up. Dalai Lama said that the children are here to help the adults, to help raise the adults. So they're very much in the present moment, and they want your attention. And so this, is small, simple, subtle practices that you can do to feel more of your energy inside of yourself, to feel a more grounded, stable foundation within you, so that you can make decisions that are supportive of you and your family, or are supportive to what's most important to you, right? We often can make decisions like, oh, I'll say yes to them and say yes to them and say yes to them. But wait a second, are any of those important to me and my family and what's important to me? So the decisions, the ability to have healthier boundaries, and the ability to be more present and grounded and available. Yeah. So those are some of the, these are skills. You can build the skills to be able to feel more stable underneath you while you're managing so much. Yeah. Hope that feels helpful. Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, I wanted to ask another question.
Please.
About, yes, in the context of the course, you already said that your focus is on the youngest generation, but in the context of the course, of course, my question is to ensure respectful and peaceful relationships and environments in our families. Will the focus will be on us, on parents, and on parenting?
Yes, that is the question. I'm sorry, can you just name the question?
Yes, if the focus of the course will be on parents and on parenting more than on children.
Yes, the course is on parenting. It's on the parents, because we as parents cannot teach skills we do not have. So we have to have these skills, not just the way we think we should have these skills, but that we live these skills. They're in our bodies, so that we're living these skills, so that everything we're doing, our children are observing and being able to see us in these, living these skills. So yes, there's questions that come up in the course around my child did this and how can I manage this and what's this mean and all of those. There's questions about the children, but everything I'm teaching is the skills that we as parents need, we as the individual, we as the adults need first and foremost to be able then to be in the relationship with our children in the ways that we want to be. And I will say, for the people who do take the course, you know, it changes your relationship with your child. It also will change your relationship with your spouse. Andra's changed her relationship with her adult children. Evia, I don't know who else, you know, these are relational skills. So there's a ripple effect across all of your relationships when you're learning to embody these skills in a greater way. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else before we close up our time together?
I may add that each one of those sessions that you will lead, those seminars, will be recorded as well. I mean, of course, the biggest benefit for you is when you're there and you can, you know, interact with other parents. That was said by parents last time, that seeing just that you are not alone with your problem, that there are other parents that have similar problems, and sometimes questions that you even didn't think to ask were asked by other parents. So that was a very, very big benefit for everybody as well. But, you know, we're all busy people, and sometimes you just can't make one evening. Then there is always the possibility of watching it. And some of the participants last time said as well that, you know, it was even good to see it. I mean, everybody can watch it a second time if they want to, but it's very good to have time to let some things sink in, you know, and to rewatch some episode or something like that. So that just said, I think that's important for everybody to know.
Important for sure. Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's basically, we're really closing up our time. So if there is anybody who really feels a burning question still to be asked, then please shoot. Otherwise, I think we will wrap up. Well, then I will give you a virtual hug, Mišelinu. And thank you for your time and for all the inspiration you gave us in this hour. And I'm very much looking forward to that course in 2 weeks from now. And
yeah, it's lovely to spend time with you all. I do hope you felt this was informative or helpful in any way. I would love to see you, meet you and get to know you more in the course. And if this doesn't feel like a right fit for you right now, that's not a problem either. I'll meet you another time, hopefully in Latvia one of these days. Yeah, so wonderful to be with you all this morning. And yeah, I look forward to being back with Evia and Andra in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well,
All right.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Came.
You're welcome.
Have a great evening, all of you.
Bye.
Bye.